If you're watching this right now, it probably wasn't by accident. Have you noticed that you constantly lose things, keys, documents, important personal items, and always at the most inconvenient moments? There's a deep spiritual reason behind this that 99% of people don't know about. And when you discover what's really happening, your life will never be the same again. What I'm about to reveal has been kept secret for centuries. Ancient traditions knew this truth, but it was deliberately hidden from the masses. Today, you're going to discover why you, as one of God's chosen ones, keep losing things, and how this is connected to your spiritual awakening. But before we dive deep, I need to tell you something that might shock you. Every single loss you've experienced in your life, every job, every relationship, every precious object that disappeared, it was all orchestrated by a higher power, not to punish you, but to prepare you for something extraordinary. The evidence is overwhelming. From biblical texts to quantum physics, from ancient manuscripts to modern neuroscience, everything points to the same truth. Certain souls are chosen for a divine mission, and part of their preparation involves systematic spiritual stripping. Stay until the end, because I'm going to reveal the 3 definitive signs that confirm you are one of the chosen, and the last sign will leave you speechless. But more than that, I'll show you exactly what to do once you recognize these signs in your own life. Let me tell you about Sarah, a 34-year-old woman who came to me desperate. She had lost 3 jobs in the past year, not due to incompetence, but because of a series of strange coincidences. Important documents would disappear from her desk, presentations would vanish from her computer, contracts would mysteriously get lost. It's like the universe is conspiring against me, she told me with tears in her eyes. I lose everything that's important. My wedding ring, family photos, even opportunities that seemed certain. Everything just disappears. But Sarah's story goes deeper than just losing things. She told me that ever since she was a child, she felt different. She could sense when people were lying. She had vivid dreams that often came true. Animals were naturally drawn to her. But instead of embracing these gifts, she had spent her entire adult life trying to fit into a normal existence. The losses began when she turned 30. First, it was small things, a favorite necklace, a book that meant everything to her. Then it escalated. Her savings account was mysteriously emptied due to a banking error that took months to resolve. Her car broke down in ways that mechanics couldn't explain. Her closest friends began to distance themselves, claiming she had become too intense. Sarah didn't know it, but she was going through what ancient mystics called the sacred stripping. She was one of the chosen ones, and the universe was preparing her for something much greater. But at that moment, she only felt pain and confusion. What made Sarah's case even more remarkable was the timing. Every major loss occurred exactly when she was about to make a decision that would keep her trapped in her old life. The job losses happened when she was considering long-term contracts. The relationship ended when she was about to settle for someone who didn't truly see her. The financial setbacks occurred when she was planning to buy a house in a city where she felt spiritually suffocated. If you identify with Sarah, if you feel like you're constantly losing important things, keep watching, because what you're about to discover will completely change your perspective on your losses. The truth is that when you're chosen by God, you don't lose things by accident. There's a spiritual pattern behind this that goes back to biblical times. Have you ever wondered why Job lost everything he had? Why the apostles abandoned their possessions? Why Jesus said it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven? There's a deep spiritual reason for this, and it's connected to your spiritual DNA. When you're born as one of the chosen ones, you carry within you a different vibrational frequency. This frequency isn't compatible with excessive material attachment. It's as if your soul knows you have a greater mission, and the universe conspires to free you from everything that might distract you from that mission. But here's what most people don't understand. Each loss is actually a preparation. Each object that disappears is clearing energetic space for something much greater to enter your life. It's like the universe is doing a spiritual cleansing on you. Think about it this way. When you want to plant a garden, you first need to clear the land. You remove the weeds, the rocks, the old debris. The land might look barren and empty for a while, but this emptiness is necessary for new growth. Your life is that garden, and the losses you're experiencing are the clearing process. Ancient texts speak of this phenomenon in many ways. The Bhagavad Gita talks about detachment as the path to enlightenment. The Tao Te Ching speaks of emptiness as the source of all potential. Even in Christianity, Jesus spoke of dying to the old self to be reborn in the spirit. But there's something even more profound happening here. Modern quantum physics is beginning to understand what ancient mystics knew all along. Consciousness creates reality. When you're chosen, your consciousness operates at a higher frequency. This higher frequency literally cannot sustain lower vibrational attachments. Dr. David Hawkins, in his groundbreaking research on consciousness levels, discovered that people operating at higher consciousness levels naturally release lower vibrational attachments. It's not a choice, it's a natural law of spiritual evolution. And there's more. There are 3 specific types of losses that only the chosen ones experience. When you know what they are, you'll understand exactly where you are in your spiritual journey. But before I reveal that, I need to tell you about something that few people know. The process of spiritual stripping doesn't just happen randomly. It follows a specific pattern, almost like a divine algorithm. First, you lose things that represent your old identity. Then, you lose relationships that no longer serve your highest good. Finally, you lose the illusion of control itself. But here's where it gets really interesting. The timing of these losses is never random. They always occur when you're on the verge of a major spiritual breakthrough. It's as if the universe knows exactly when you're ready for the next level of your awakening. For over 2 decades, I've studied with spiritual masters around the world. Tibetan monks, Amazonian shamans, Jewish Kabbalists, Sufi mystics, Hindu gurus, and all of them, regardless of their tradition, spoke about the same phenomenon, the sacred stripping of the chosen ones. Master Chen, an 89-year-old Buddhist monk who lives in the Himalayas, told me something I'll never forget. When the soul is ready to ascend, the universe removes everything that keeps it bound to the illusion of matter. First comes confusion, then frustration, but in the end comes freedom. Master Chen had experienced this himself. Born into a wealthy family in Tibet, he lost everything when he was 25. His family's fortune, his arranged marriage, even his homeland. When he had to flee to India, he told me that each loss felt like a death, but each death was actually a birth into a higher state of consciousness. In the Kabbalistic tradition, there's a concept called tikkun olam, the repair of the world. Kabbalists believe that certain souls are sent to Earth with a specific mission, but to fulfill this mission, they must go through a process of purification, which includes material detachment. Rabbi Sarah Michaels, a respected Kabbalist teacher, explained to me, the chosen souls come to Earth carrying light from the divine realm, but this light cannot shine through a vessel that is cluttered with material attachments. The universe must empty the vessel so it can fulfill its purpose. She showed me ancient texts that describe this process in detail. According to these texts, the chosen ones go through what's called the 7 strippings, 7 levels of detachment, that prepare them for their divine mission. Shaman Don Carlos, with whom I lived for 3 months in the Amazon forest, taught me about the path of the spiritual warrior. He told me the chosen ones always lose their possessions first, then their illusions, and finally find their true strength. Don Carlos had his own story of loss. He was once a successful businessman. In Lima, Peru, he had everything: money, status, a beautiful family. But at age 40, he began losing everything. His business failed, his wife left him, his children stopped speaking to him. He ended up living on the streets. That it was during this darkest period that he heard the call to return to his ancestral roots. He made his way to the Amazon, where his grandmother's tribe took him in. There, he discovered his true calling as a healer and spiritual. In the Islamic tradition, the Sufis speak of fana, the dissolution of the ego. Great Sufi master Rumi wrote extensively about this process. He described how the soul must be emptied of all attachments to be filled with divine love. I spent time with a Sufi master in Turkey, Sheikh Abdullah, who explained, The chosen ones are like cups that the divine wants to fill with sacred wine. But first, the cup must be emptied of all impurities. The losses are not punishments, they are preparations. These traditions, separated by continents and centuries, all speak of the same truth. If you keep losing things, it might be because your soul is preparing for something extraordinary. But there's even deeper knowledge, something that only the initiated know. It's about the specific signs that indicate you're in the middle of this transformation process. The Hindu tradition speaks of samskaras, karmic impressions that must be cleared before enlightenment. The Vedic texts describe how chosen souls incarnate with specific karmic patterns that create the conditions for their spiritual awakening. Dr. Michael Newton, who studied thousands of cases of past life regression, discovered that advanced souls often choose difficult life circumstances to accelerate their spiritual growth. In his book Journey of Souls, he documents how these souls actually plan their major losses before incarnating. Even in Christianity, we see this pattern. St. John of the Cross wrote about the dark night of the soul, a process of spiritual purification that involves the loss of all consolations and attachments. He described it as a necessary stage in the journey toward union with God. Now I'm going to reveal the 3 types of losses that only the chosen ones experience. But first, I need to warn you, once you know this, you won't be able to ignore the signs in your life anymore. These aren't just random categories I've made up. These are patterns that have been observed and documented by spiritual traditions for thousands of years. Each type of loss serves a specific purpose in your spiritual evolution. First type, significant material loss. Not talking about losing a pen or a napkin. I'm talking about losing things that have real sentimental or financial value. Family, jewelry, important documents, money, property, even your home or job. But here's the mystery. These losses always happen when you're on the threshold of a great spiritual transformation. Sarah, whom I mentioned at the beginning, lost her wedding ring a week before discovering that her husband was having an affair. The loss of the ring was a spiritual warning, a preparation so she could free herself from a relationship that was preventing her from growing. But let me tell you about Marcus, a 45-year-old architect who came to me after losing his dream house. He had spent 10 years building this house, pouring his heart and soul into every detail. Then, due to a series of legal complications that seemed to come out of nowhere, he lost it all. Marcus was devastated. He couldn't understand why this was happening to him. He was a good person. He helped others. He worked hard. But what Marcus didn't realize was that his attachment to this house had become an obsession. He was spending 16 hours a day working on it, neglecting his family, his health, and his spiritual life. The loss of the house forced Marcus to reevaluate his priorities. Within 6 months, he had reconciled with his estranged children, started a meditation practice, and discovered that his true calling was not building houses, but building community. He now runs a non-profit that provides housing for the homeless. Material losses for the chosen ones often involve things that represent their old identity or their ego attachments. The universe removes these things not to punish, but to redirect their energy toward their true purpose. Second type, loss of toxic relationships. Chosen ones frequently lose people around them. Friends drift away, family members become hostile, romantic relationships end suddenly. This isn't coincidence. It's as if these people can no longer tolerate your elevated vibrational frequency. It's painful, but it's necessary. You can't carry low energy when you're being prepared for a divine mission. Let me tell you about Jennifer, a 28-year-old teacher who experienced this type of loss. As she began her spiritual awakening, she noticed that her longtime friend group started excluding her from activities. They would make plans without her, cancel on her at the last minute, and when she tried to talk about her spiritual experiences, they would change the subject or make jokes. At first, Jennifer thought there was something wrong with her. She tried to change herself to fit back in, but it only made things worse. The harder she tried to maintain these relationships, the more distant her friends became. What Jennifer didn't understand was that her friends were unconsciously reacting to her rising consciousness. As she became more authentic, more spiritually aware, her presence began to trigger their own unresolved issues. They weren't bad people, they just weren't ready for the level of truth and authenticity that Jennifer was embodying. The loss of these relationships was painful, but it created space for Jennifer to attract her true soul tribe. Within a year, she had found a community of like-minded individuals who supported her spiritual growth and celebrated her authentic self. Relationship losses for the chosen ones often involve people who are still operating from fear, judgment, or lower consciousness. These relationships must be released to make room for connections that will support your mission. Third type, loss of old identity. This is the deepest and most profound type of loss. You lose interest in things you once loved. You lose passion for the work you chose. You lose identification with who you thought you were. It's as if your old personality is being dissolved to make room for who you really are. This type of loss is often the most confusing because it happens gradually. You might wake up one day and realize that the career you spent years building no longer brings you joy. The hobbies you used to love feel meaningless. The goals you once had seem hollow and empty. Let me tell you about David, a 52-year-old corporate lawyer who experienced this type of loss. For 25 years, he had defined himself by his career. He was successful, respected, wealthy. His identity was completely wrapped up in being David the lawyer. But as he approached his 50th birthday, something began to shift. The cases that used to excite him felt pointless. The money that used to motivate him felt empty. He found himself questioning everything: his values, his purpose, his entire life. David described it as feeling like he was watching his life from the outside, as if he was living someone else's dream. He went through what he called identity crisis, but what was really happening was an identity evolution. The old David, the one who was driven by external validation and material success, was dying. In his place, a new David was being born, one who was connected to his deeper purpose and authentic self. This process took 2 years. During that time, David left his law firm. Before I reveal the fourth type of loss, I need to explain something crucial about how this process works. The losses you experience as one of the chosen ones aren't random. They follow a specific spiritual algorithm. Think of it like this: your soul came to earth with a specific mission, but to fulfill this mission, you need to operate at a certain frequency. Everything in your life that doesn't match this frequency must be released. It's like tuning a radio. You have to eliminate static to get a clear signal. The process usually follows this pattern. Phase 1. The awakening losses, ages 2035. These are the losses that wake you up to the fact that something deeper is happening. They're often material losses or relationship endings that seem to come out of nowhere. The purpose of these losses is to get your attention and start you questioning the nature of reality. Phase 2. The purification losses, ages 35 to 45. These are deeper losses that strip away your false identity and ego attachments. They often involve career changes, major relationship endings, or health crises that force you to reevaluate your entire life. The purpose is to purify your consciousness and align you with your true self. Phase 3. The initiation losses, ages 45 plus. These are the most profound losses that prepare you for your actual spiritual mission. They often involve the loss of your need for external validation, your attachment to outcomes, and your illusion of control. The purpose is to initiate you into your role as a spiritual teacher, healer, or guide. But here's something most people don't know. You can actually accelerate this process by working with the losses consciously instead of resisting them. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who studied death and dying for decades, discovered that people who accepted their losses and found meaning in them actually evolved faster spiritually. She found that the chosen ones had a unique ability to transform their suffering into wisdom. The key is understanding that each loss is actually a spiritual test. The universe is asking, are you ready to let go of this attachment and step into your power? How you respond to the test determines how quickly you move through the process. The 4 tests of the chosen ones. The test of material attachment. Can you find your worth beyond your possessions? The test of relationship attachment. Can you love without clinging? The test of identity attachment. Can you be nobody to become everybody? The test of control. Can you surrender to divine will? Each test comes disguised as a loss. but it's actually an opportunity to claim more of your spiritual power. Remember Sarah? After she understood what was happening, her life changed completely. She stopped fighting against the losses and began to see each one as a gift from the universe. When she lost her third job, instead of despair, she decided to start her own business. When she lost the ring and discovered her husband's betrayal, she had the courage to start over. When she lost friends who criticized her choices, she found her true tribe. Today, 2 years later, Sarah has a thriving business, is in a healthy and happy relationship, and discovered that she has healing gifts she was ignoring. She told me each loss was actually a disguised gain. I just couldn't see it at the time, but Sarah's transformation goes even deeper. She told me that the losses taught her something invaluable, the difference between wanting and needing. Before her awakening, she wanted many things: the approval of others, financial security, a perfect relationship. But the losses taught her that she didn't actually need any of these things to be happy. I discovered that I am enough, just as I am, she said. The losses stripped away everything I thought I needed, and what remained was pure, unshakable self-worth. This is one of the greatest gifts of the chosen one's journey. When you lose everything external, you discover the treasure within. You realize that your value doesn't come from what you have, but from who you are. And science is beginning to understand this too. Recent studies in neuroplasticity show that moments of loss and adversity can accelerate neural growth and consciousness evolution. It's as if the brain uses the trauma of loss to reorganize itself at a higher level. Dr. Rick Hansen, a neuropsychologist from Harvard, discovered that people who go through significant losses and process them consciously develop greater resilience, compassion, and intuition. They literally evolve neurologically. His research shows that the chosen ones have a unique brain pattern. Their anterior cingulate cortex, the part of the brain responsible for empathy and emotional regulation, is significantly more developed than average. This development often occurs as a result of processing losses consciously. But here's what impresses me most: the chosen ones don't just recover from losses faster, they become stronger because of them. It's as if each loss is a spiritual upgrade that increases their capacity for love, wisdom, and service. Dr. Kristen Neff's research on self-compassion shows that people who have experienced significant losses and learned to be kind to themselves develop what she calls post-traumatic growth. They don't just bounce back, they bounce forward into a higher level of functioning. Let me tell you about Michael, a 38-year-old musician who lost his hearing in a car accident. At first, he was devastated. His entire identity was wrapped up in his music career. He went through a period of deep depression and rage. But as Michael began to process his loss consciously, something remarkable happened. He discovered that losing his hearing had actually sharpened his other senses. He could feel vibrations in ways he never had before. He could sense the emotional energy of people around him. With incredible accuracy, Michael eventually became a healer, using sound therapy and energy work to help others. He told me, losing my hearing was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to develop abilities I never knew I had. This is the pattern I see over and over with the chosen ones. What appears to be a devastating loss becomes the doorway to their greatest gift. To truly understand what's happening when you lose things as one of the chosen ones, we need to look at the quantum level of reality. Quantum physics has revealed some astonishing truths about the nature of consciousness and reality that perfectly explain the phenomenon of spiritual loss. Dr. Amit Goswami, a quantum physicist and consciousness researcher, has shown that consciousness is the fundamental ground of being. Everything in the physical world emerges from consciousness, not the other way around. This means that when your consciousness shifts, your recent advances in neuroscience are revealing the brain changes that occur during spiritual awakening. Dr. Andrew Newberg at the University of Pennsylvania has been studying the brains of people undergoing spiritual experiences for over 20 years. His research shows that during spiritual awakening, several key areas of the brain undergo significant changes. The default mode network (DMN). This is the part of the brain associated with self-referential thinking and ego identity. In the chosen ones, the DMN becomes less active, which correlates with a decreased attachment to the false self. The anterior cingulate cortex ACC, this region is responsible for empathy and emotional regulation. It becomes significantly more active in the chosen ones, allowing them to process losses with greater wisdom and compassion. The prefrontal cortex, this area is associated with higher order thinking and decision-making. It shows increased activity in the chosen ones, helping them understand the deeper meaning of their losses. The insula, this region processes interoceptive awareness, the ability to sense internal bodily signals. It becomes more active in the chosen ones, increasing their intuitive abilities. Dr. Judson Brewer's research at Yale shows that people who have experienced significant losses and processed them consciously have different brain patterns than those who haven't. Their brains show less activity in the areas associated with craving and attachment. This neurological evidence supports what ancient traditions have taught for millennia. Spiritual losses literally rewire your brain for higher consciousness. But perhaps the most fascinating discovery is that the chosen ones' brains show increased connectivity between the logical left hemisphere and the intuitive right hemisphere. This integration allows them to understand both the practical and spiritual aspects of their losses. Dr. Jill Bolt-Taylor, a neuroanatomist who experienced a stroke that temporarily shut down her left brain, describes this integration beautifully. She says that when the chattering left brain is quiet, the right brain can access what she calls the peace of the all that is. For the chosen ones, losses often serve to quiet the logical mind's resistance, allowing access to this deeper knowing. Now, we come to the fourth type of loss that only the most advanced chosen ones experience. This is the loss that marks your final initiation into your spiritual mission. It's the loss of the need for a spiritual identity altogether. Let me explain what I mean. In the earlier stages of awakening, you might identify as a spiritual person. You might be proud of your psychic abilities, your meditation practice, your knowledge of spiritual concepts. But there comes a point where even this spiritual identity must be released. This is what the great spiritual teacher Jiddu Krishnamurti called the dissolution of the observer. It's the moment when you realize that even your spiritual seeking is a form of attachment. I witnessed this with a student of mine, Rebecca, who had been on the spiritual path for over 20 years. She was a respected teacher, had written books on spirituality, and had thousands of followers. But at age 55, she experienced what she called the great emptying. She lost all interest in being a spiritual teacher. She stopped giving workshops, stopped writing, stopped talking about spirituality altogether. Her followers were confused. Some accused her of having a spiritual crisis or even losing her faith. But what was really happening was that Rebecca was undergoing the ultimate initiation. She was being stripped of her spiritual identity to reveal her true essence, pure consciousness itself. I realized I had been making spirituality into another ego project, she told me. I was so identified with being spiritual that I had forgotten what it meant to simply be. This fourth type of loss is the most subtle and the most profound. It's the loss of the seeker itself. When this happens, you don't become less spiritual, you become so spiritual that you no longer need to identify with spirituality. It's like the old Zen saying, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. Even the Buddha, even your highest spiritual ideals, must eventually be released. This is why some of the most advanced spiritual beings in history appeared to be completely ordinary people. They had moved beyond the need for spiritual identity into pure being. What you're experiencing isn't just personal transformation, it's part of a cosmic evolutionary process. We're living in what many traditions call the end times, not the end of the world, but the end of an age of consciousness. Ancient texts speak of this time as a period of great transition, when humanity as a whole will undergo a spiritual awakening. The Hopi prophecies call it the Great Purification. The Hindu texts refer to it as the end of the Kali Yuga. The Mayans predicted it as the end of one cosmic cycle and the beginning of another. Your losses are part of this larger cosmic process. As one of the chosen ones, you're not just evolving. Personally, you're serving as a catalyst for the evolution of human consciousness itself. This is why your losses often feel so intense and so destined. You're not just releasing your own attachments, you're helping to release the collective attachments of humanity. Carl Jung wrote about this phenomenon in his theory of the collective unconscious. He believed that certain individuals serve as vessels for the collective transformation of humanity. Your losses are part of this collective healing process. But here's what makes this even more significant. The losses you experience aren't just random. They're specifically designed to activate certain spiritual capacities that are needed for the new age of consciousness. Each loss you experience is actually awakening dormant DNA strands that contain spiritual abilities. Scientists are now discovering that what they previously called junk DNA is actually dormant genetic material that gets activated during times of stress and transformation. Dr. Kazuo Murakami, a geneticist from Japan, has shown that consciousness can actually turn genes on and off. Your losses are creating the conditions for the activation of your spiritual DNA. This is why you might notice that you're developing psychic abilities, heightened intuition, or healing capacities after experiencing losses. These aren't new abilities. They're latent capacities that are being awakened. Understanding the spiritual significance of your losses is just the beginning. The real question is, how do you navigate this process in a way that serves your highest evolution? Here are the key principles that I've learned from working with thousands of chosen ones. 1. Surrender. Don't resist the natural tendency when you lose something important is to fight against it, to try to get it back, to figure out how to prevent future losses. But for the chosen ones, resistance only prolongs the process. Instead, practice what I call conscious surrender. When you lose something, say to yourself, I release this with love, and trust that something better is coming. This doesn't mean you become passive. It means you align with the flow of your evolution. 2. Look for the gift in every loss. Every loss contains a gift, but sometimes that gift isn't immediately apparent. Start asking yourself, what is this loss teaching me? What capacity is it developing in me? What is it preparing me for? Keep a loss journal where you write down what you've lost and what you've gained as a result. Over time, you'll start to see the pattern of how your losses are actually upgrades in disguise. 3. Trust the timing. The chosen ones often experience losses at what seems like the worst possible time. But there's always a divine timing to these events. Trust that the universe knows exactly when you're ready for each loss. 4. Connect with your spiritual community. One of the most important things you can do is connect with other chosen ones who understand what you're going through. The path of the chosen one can be lonely, but you're not meant to walk it alone. 5. Develop your spiritual practices. Losses are opportunities to deepen your spiritual practice. Use the empty space created by loss to cultivate meditation, prayer, or whatever practice resonates with you. 6. Serve others as you heal from your losses. Look for ways to help others who are going through similar experiences. Your wounds become your wisdom, and your wisdom becomes your gift to the world. As you progress through your journey of spiritual losses, there are certain signs that indicate you're ready for the next level of your evolution. You stop taking losses personally when you no longer interpret losses as punishment or evidence that you're doing something wrong. You're ready for deeper levels of transformation. You feel gratitude for your losses when you can genuinely thank the universe for your losses, knowing they're serving your highest good. You're approaching mastery. You help others navigate their losses when you start becoming a source of wisdom and comfort for others going through similar experiences. You're stepping into your role as a spiritual guide. You lose the need to control outcomes when you can plant seeds without being attached to the harvest. You're ready for the ultimate levels of spiritual service. You find peace in uncertainty when you can live comfortably with not knowing what's coming next. You're ready for the mysteries of advanced spiritual work. Now we come to the deepest mystery of all. Throughout this journey, I've been preparing you for a revelation that will change everything you think you know about your purpose on earth. The losses you've experienced, the pain you've endured, the confusion you've felt, it's all been preparation for this moment. The moment when you discover not just that you're one of the chosen ones, but what you've actually been chosen for. What I'm about to tell you has never been spoken publicly before. It's knowledge that has been guarded by secret societies, hidden in ancient texts, and passed down through mystery schools for thousands of years. You see, The chosen ones aren't just here to evolve personally. You're here to serve as anchors for a new level of consciousness on Earth. Your losses haven't just been preparing you for your own awakening. They've been preparing you to help humanity itself ascend to a higher level of existence. But here's what will keep you awake tonight. There's something happening right now, something that connects all the chosen ones around the world. A cosmic event that's been prophesied for millennia is about